Adrian, you have to guess.
Rabbit.
Is that what it is?
What kind of rabbit? It's just a rabbit.
No, it's just a rabbit. That's fine. Okay, Adrian got it. Good job,
So
Adrian.
kids get a point.
Kids get a point.
Here's
Dad.
one.
Dad, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
You want to act out? Hey, Dad, we're going to play. You know how to act. Dad, you know how to act.
Okay, ready? Dad has to guess what mom is. Ready?
Okay. Wait a sec. Wait, I need to get everything on one side. 3, 2, 1.
Butterfly.
A bird.
Yeah. Butterfly. Got
It's
it.
super easy.
Parrots get a point.
1 point.
Okay, ready, go.
Christmas tree? Squirrel? Raccoon. No!
You gotta try some other things. He's not getting it.
Damien.
Is it a building?
Is it an animal?
Animal? No. Person?
Is it a place?
Try something else,
Is
Adrian.
that a noun?
Well, what? He said person, place, or thing.
Okay, time's over.
What? Alright, now it's the grown-up's turn to act.
Well, he wants.
No, he wants to go. Look. Okay. He's like pecking the ground. He's like
Beaver.
Or what else like pecks the ground like that and eats like seeds and stuff.
Birds.
Yeah, like a chicken. Turkey.
Rooster.
Woodpecker.
Rooster.
Oh no, he's like swimming.
Wait, are you swimming?
Oh,
Are you pecking?
he's swimming.
Are you swimming?
Yes.
Are you shark?
Is that swimming?
Are you a fish?
Shark. He's swimming.
Are you a fish?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Let's Read listeners. Quick thing before we start. This podcast technically has a boss. His name is Adrian. He's 7. He checks the subscriber numbers every week. He sets aggressive targets. And I've been told just try harder is his full management philosophy. So follow or subscribe and tell a friend to do the same. It'll help me keep my job. And stick around because this is a real-time journey, learning, parenting, work, life. I'm sorting through all of it out loud for your entertainment. So come on this journey with us. Now, let's ride. Most people don't miss opportunities. They ignore them. Not because they're lazy, but because they didn't recognize them in the moment. Our guest today does, and this episode tells the story of what could happen if you do. When you follow curiosity instead of a plan. When you say yes before you feel ready. And when you actually follow up when everyone else forgets. Because the difference between staying stuck and completely changing your trajectory is often just one conversation, one decision, or one moment where you raise your hand. We talk about building a career without a blueprint, turning random encounters into real opportunities, and why most people never get where they want to go, not because they can't, but because they don't act. If you've ever felt like you're figuring it out as you go, this one's for you. Our guest today is Sean Todd. So Sean, I'm going to start with the hardest hitting question I could think. I've had a long time to think about this conversation. And so I'm going to ask the hardest hitting question up front. And that is, I've heard the phrase somewhere that you should never trust somebody that has 2 first names. So is that true? Okay, that is true. So Sean Todd, can you tell us?
Yes.
That's about as hard hitting as we get on the show, Sean. But no, in reality. As I come up, I was trying to figure out what is the source of that. I'm assuming you've heard that a few times.
I was going to ask that same question, Paul, because I've heard that a number of times, but it's sort of like that old expression, those who can do, those who cannot teach. What a terrible insult to the educational profession. Where did that come from?
True.
I mean, as a former teacher, I take umbrage at that expression.
I agree.
Because a lot of people, in fact, the guy that should be on your next show has been a principal at East LA at Salesian High School for 35 years. He has turned that school around. He's sent kids to Georgetown and Berkeley and Yale and, influenced countless youth. So Yeah.
I think, I was going to say, I don't think a lot of people know this, but I've been in the corporate world 95% of my life, but I actually left and taught high school for a year. So I'm 100% with you on the educator comments.
Where'd you go? Where'd you teach?
I taught at a high school. It was an all-boys Catholic high school called Damien High School. I thought I also wanted to be a teacher. Turns out, trying to wrangle and get a room of 30 14-year-old boys to pay attention to you is not as easy as it might sound. So I have a whole level of respect that for the educators out there than a lot do. I know a lot of us do, but yeah, 100%.
We have a little bit of a similar way of thinking, Paul, because teaching 30 boys how to write an English sentence, 14-year-olds, when there's no air conditioning and it's 90 degrees in your classroom, that is by far the hardest job I've ever had. I mean, I was a speechwriter for a member of the president's cabinet. Tough job, right? But not nearly as hard as teaching English to high schoolers.
You've got such a vast and wide-ranging professional background that I don't even think we could cover all given the format that I use, but let's just touch just so people get a sense of who Sean Todd is. So if you go back to the beginning of your professional experience, where does that start? And then let's see if we can make our progression through that.
I'd love to, Paul. Depends how you define professional. Everyone still has jobs in growing up, right?
Sure.
And then after college, whatever, your first job, right?
Right.
So senior year of college, I just come back from 12 months in Australia, my junior year. Just a life of fun and hedonism.
Yeah.
That country back then there's 10 gears on your bike in life. That country was second gear, first gear. Going back to Washington, D.C., it's like 8, 9, 10th gear. So culture shock. Like everybody in the world, nobody knows what they want to do after college. Right. Almost everybody. I almost went to China to teach English, Paul. Somehow swerved on that. It's a mix of terror and joy when you graduate from college. You don't know, the world is out there. What are you going to do? I went to this one thing at Georgetown, and it was a session on something called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And that is the Catholic version of the Peace Corps. 4 values: simple lifestyle, community, spirituality, and social justice. And it basically means you help poor people, people who are disadvantaged. That's all it means. It's a 1-year commitment, not 2 years like the Peace Corps. I got placed in Santa Ana, California, and my job was to help inner city youth at risk, inner city kids actually be willing to volunteer in nonprofit agencies and go help others, even though they themselves were disadvantaged. My job was to go help them sort of empower themselves and go help other people. And the great Washington Post columnist, William Raspberry, wrote a column about this very topic, stimulating inner city youth to go help other people who are at risk. It was a good job. I learned a lot. It was a 1-year commitment. And then, how life throws different curveballs at you, Paul. We were at a fundraiser for the Chrysalis Center. It's this homeless nonprofit in LA, Los Angeles, downtown hotel with the Ambassador Hotel. We're walking out. This is during my 1 year in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. We're walking out of the hotel, and I hear off to the left, thump, 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 thump. I was like, oh man, what's going on over there? I walk over there. This gentleman at the front door. I said, what's this? He said, this is Salesian High School prom. I said, really? Do you need any teachers? He said, yeah, we sure do. Come on in. Let me introduce you to the principal. I go in. He introduced me to the principal. He said, send me your resume. The next week I interview and get a job as a teacher at Salesian High School. And it's just so full of each little story, as you know, Paul, leads to more stories.
So let me pause there because I think there's a couple things I want to unpack. And so one is, it's funny you were talking about this because I just was posting about this on LinkedIn, and that is, similar to you, it sounds like, had no game plan from college. I didn't do an internship. I basically said, hey, let me get a general business education degree and I'll figure out what to do with it. When I graduated, I kind of screwed around, spent a couple months burning through my graduation money. And then as my bank account was getting low, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's the time I got to go get a job. And so I didn't know what industry I wanted to get into. I didn't know what kind of role. I just kind of started going on monster.com, career builder, and just looking around and just kind of applying willy-nilly to whatever I thought sounded somewhat interesting. Thankfully, I stumbled into a career that I've now been doing for 18 or 19 years, but one could argue that that's some dumb luck, because I think a lot of the kids today, you look at my brother and other people, they're very deliberate in their internships. They're very deliberate in the industries that they want to go into. They're building their network. They're doing these things that are preparing them for kind of more specific careers. And so I'm pleased to know, Sean, that I'm not the only one that took kind of the kind of float through the wind and kind of see where you stick approach. So that sounds like what basically happened for you. Is that, I mean, am I right on that? And if so, what was your plan? I mean, it sounds like, you hear some music here, so you go in this direction. You kind of hear about this program, so you go in that direction. So just tell me more about your philosophy on how you identify opportunities and things like that.
I love open-ended questions, Paul. So I always thought that teaching, would be a cool profession. I had some amazing teachers in high school and college. You have the opportunity to influence younger people. That always, was attractive to me. I didn't think it would be a lifelong career, but I was open to it. There's 1,000 more than 10,000, more than that variables about your career path, right? You're right. I did not have a game plan, but I do think as long as you're moving in the right direction, Paul, broadly speaking, you're going to be fine, and just keep going forward.
How would you define right direction?
It's pretty vague, Paul, but just your general interest. I mean, here's what happened to me living in Los Angeles. I met my future wife. She was placed in the same community that I was in the Jesuit volunteer course. So we ended up living together with 2 other women and 2 other men for a year. Fell in love. We stayed in LA for another 2 years. I was teaching, but at the same time, Paul, I caught the green bug in Los Angeles. And that's really was the turn for me. I was, flying into LAX. Remember the early 90s, that giant brown turd hanging over the city when you fly in? Awful. It really made an impact on me, for better, for worse. Yeah. I was like, this is not the way. I was jogging in, Square Mile Park in Santa Ana, choking on fumes, like throwing up because of the smog at 5:00 at night. Beautiful park. It's 1 square mile in Santa Ana. And then on top of that, some of the most beautiful beaches on the planet. I'm talking from San Diego to Santa Barbara. When I lived there were signs, do not swim. You will be violently ill. And so these gorgeous beaches and oceans, I caught the green bug there, ended up working on moving back, getting married, working on environmentalists for Clinton Gore in the 92 campaign. And so just moving to California sort of shaped my viewpoint, outlook, worldview. And I was not into environmental issues in college or high school, but I was when I lived in LA.
So Sean, let's talk about, so you're teaching, and how do you, I mean, I would say they're similar, but how do you transition from teaching into this other? Yeah.
All right. Great question. I mean, I do think the power of chance is amazing. So one Thursday night, Buddy and I, Todd Johnson and I, go down to the China Club in Hollywood. That's where Madonna used to go dancing in the 90s. So we walk in on a Thursday night, and there's Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. On stage is Woody Harrelson in his band. And there's a private party downstairs. And my buddy and I, we sneak into the party, we just go for it, go sneak in the private party downstairs. In comes Woody with 2 women on each arm. And one of the women put their drink down on my table, and she came back to get her drink. Her name was Bonnie Reese. Rest in peace. Bonnie Reese founded the Hollywood Women's Political Caucus. She ended up becoming Arnold Schwarzenegger's chief of staff when he was governor. She's deeply involved in the environmental movement. She was an A-list entertainment lawyer, but gave it up to start with something called the Earth Communications Office, ECO, ECHO. And we started chatting, and I ended up doing volunteer work for her, and she helped me transition back in DC. But the funny thing is, she asked me that night at the China Club, we're like, hey, man, what do you do? Well, I'm the teacher. It's like, she says, Paul, Woody would love to hear about this. I'm like, I don't need to go talk to Woody Harrelson. She says, come on. So we go talk. Woody's like, hey, I'd love to come speak at your school.
Okay.
He ends up walking into my classroom the next week, walks right into my classroom. Bonnie and Woody walk. And all the kids, these ninth graders, like, whoa, Woody Harrelson, what are you doing here? So we have a school assembly, and this was during the first Iraq War. Joe Fraley was our principal. This guy he wrote the screenplay Good Guys Wear Black with, Chuck Norris. The principal was also a screenwriter. So he loved Hollywood. So he said, let's bring Woody on. So Woody plays his guitar, he makes some comments, and he speaks out against the war in Iraq. Half the faculty walk out, Paul, because they're offended.
Right.
That somebody spoke out against the Iraq war. And so that was an interesting anecdote in LA. But Bonnie, she died of cancer a couple of years ago. I started doing work in her office, the Earth Communications Office. And we got to know each other, and she helped me because when Bill Clinton was elected in 92, she was tasked to organize, if you recall that inauguration, all over the planet, there was a bell ringing ceremony. Bill Clinton walked across Memorial Bridge over to Arlington Cemetery from the Lincoln, and we rang bells. She organized all that. She was an amazing woman. And so That's a long roundabout way, Paul, of answering our question.
Well, so before we move on, I got to make sure I can keep up here. And I want to point out something that I think seems maybe just organic to you, but is having interviewed as many people as I have, stands out to me. And that is, it's not every day that somebody goes to a bar or club, meets somebody that they've never met before, and that turns into a friendship and a career move. So let's talk about that, right? Because I think when people meet, it's usually very surface level, very casual. Hey, the weather out there, and what do you do for a living, and things like that. And then you never hear from these people again, right? And you're telling a story about I randomly come across this person, we get to talking, and then that turns into a relationship that lasts. It sounds like a couple decades. So I guess, is that a personality trait of yours? Is that something that you learn that, hey, I just got to go deep when I meet people? Let's talk about that's network building, right? To the highest degree.
I admire your questioning strategy, Paul. I love it. That is one of the fundamental, two things, Paul. Most people don't follow up. You're absolutely right. Especially in DC too. Follow up is everything. It's 3 simple words, a cliche, but I really think it happens. If you don't follow up, nothing happens. I got so much follow up to do right today of potential clients and senators and members of the House that I have to follow up on. I could just let it go and then nothing happens. But follow up is everything. But the second thing is, do you read Paulo Coelho, that author? Highly recommend. He's written world's best-selling authors and, Warrior of Light, so many books, so good. And The Alchemist, it's a really seminal book that he wrote. One of his theses is, I know it sounds like California psychobabble, but I do believe it's true because you're bringing it up and it's the premise of your question. Be open to the universe. When you're aligned with your whatever you want, the universe will help you get it. That's Paulo Coelho. But if you're open to a conversation, you could be walking along the street and some guy could offer you a job for $200,000 and you wouldn't know it unless you made the effort to go talk.
Yeah, I guess that's the underlying theme I'm seeing here, right? You talk about, hey, I heard some heart pounding music. I followed it. I meet this principal. I am in this club. I talked to this person that's around Woody Harrelson. I got a job, right? So yeah, it just seems like in a way, you're kind of just floating with the wind, but wherever it's taking you, you're taking advantage of it. And I think
But then I love how you're piecing this together, Paul. You're figuring me out. It's you're a free therapist here, but there's always setbacks, right?
Sure.
So let me give you the next stage, which is very difficult, probably the most difficult stage of my life, most depressing stage of my life. My then girlfriend, I proposed to her. We're both East Coast families. We go back east, get married in 92. I volunteer on environmentalists for Clinton Gore campaign. I get an internship on Capitol Hill. I'm the oldest intern on Capitol Hill. I'm married, 25. 25 as a Capitol intern is extremely old, but they gave me a shot and, they treated me with respect. But, did I mention I'm going prematurely bald at this point right now? So I'm doing all this. I'm married. My wife is working. She's a social worker. I don't have a real job yet. My in-laws, my father was like, what's he going to do? My mother, what's he going to do? What's his job? Does he have any money? For a year, Paul, I'm looking for a job. And I think it's because I was a teacher and teachers don't really have a ton of respect in the corporate world or whatever world you're transitioning to. It's hard to transition from education to almost anything else. Mm-hmm. So that year, Paul, depressed. I was low. And every time somebody would call me up, my uncle, my dad was like, Sean, you got a job yet? It was deflating my balloon, big axe. No, Uncle Mike, I don't have a job. When I do have a job, I'll let you know, but don't ask me every time because it's depressing. So I came to the realization that I needed to go back into teaching. I need to go become a principal, right? So I'm working construction that summer. I just call up Angles Construction and, Jake Fryer gives me a job over the phone, $8 an hour, 26 years old. And Angles Construction, we're building a back deck for King Hussein of Jordan. We're not supposed to know who that is, but he's out in Potomac, Maryland. It's really huge house. Dan Snyder ended up buying that house, owner of Redskins. But I decide, I didn't make it in politics and environmental energy issues and policy, so I'll go back to teaching. I started taking classes at Johns Hopkins University to get a master's in education administration. And then here comes another frying pan to the face, Paul. The dean of that school says, after I'd taken a couple courses, I don't think this program is right for you. I had already gone down the road, started taking paying for classes. I get a Heisman to the face. I'm teaching at another all-boys Catholic school, St. Anselm's Abbey. Great school. You know, in terms of like scholastic accomplishment, they're like the second highest SAT scores in the nation. Each class is like 10 to 15 kids. I had like an 8th grader, Paul, write a 30-page paper in 8th grade. So these are big brain kids. It was very easy to teach there because they were so motivated. But then here comes the break, Paul. My godmother, whom I had never known, Kathy McGregor. She was my mom's best friend growing up. And I tell Ian, Kathy, we're talking over the phone. I'd like to really try to do something in the environmental field here. And that's why I moved back here. She's like, well, you got to talk to Tom Grumbly. Her husband had passed away. It was his best friend. So Tom Grumbly was Al Gore's chief of staff. I get on his calendar. He's got 30 people calling him today because he was going to be, in the Clinton Gore administration, he was going to be one of the Senate confirmed, high-ranking cabinet members. And I go see Tom, and he says, it takes a year, 12 more months to get hired by Tom. And so that was 12 months, man. But he hired me. He was an assistant secretary of the Department of Energy for Environmental Management, which is tasked with the mission of cleaning up the environmental legacy of the Manhattan Project. When you make a nuclear bomb, it requires, to make plutonium, you bathe it in acid, it creates high-level waste. So the most polluted site in our hemisphere is Hanford, Washington. And there's 165 million gallons of high-level waste, toxic, which is a group. And so I started working for Tom at the Department of Energy. And I was writing letters because they always get letters. I was editing letters. And then here comes another inflection point. I don't know how you describe this, Paul, but Bev Heffernan, Tom's speechwriter, decides to retire. And Tom says it at senior staff meeting, like, I need a new speechwriter. Anybody want to do it? So this is what I do, Paul. I go like this.
Raises the hand. Okay.
I'll give it a shot. I just did that, man, out of fear and I don't know what, a little ambition.
Yeah.
But I raised up my hand. He said, all right, Sean, get together with Bev. And, my God, the first speech was horrible. He brought it back at the draft. He said, this is not your best work, Sean.
Yeah.
So over time, Tom is a brilliant man. Every time I'd walk in to say, Tom, what do you want to say on this speech or to this group? He would open his mouth and out would come this coherent, cogent, fully formed speech. And I would just desperately write everything down as fast as I could, try to capture what he wanted, and then go back and write it. And Bev eventually left. And then, so Tom, I got a little bit better, not that much. But
so Sean, this is all, it sounds like you really could have benefited from ChatGPT because it does all that stuff now. You were back then before all that stuff. So I want to keep hammering on this point because I'm a big proponent, of network building and the other phrase that you mentioned, which is follow up or follow through. Because I also don't say that. In fact, I just had a solo episode last week where I talked about this ad nauseum because I was cleaning out my garage and I came across a business card for the owner of the company that I work for. He came into my college classroom. He gave a spiel about what his company does, and he handed out his business card at the end. I took that business card, and it was 6 months later, but I sent him an email, and the next day I had a job, right? And so I just think people don't understand, or I don't know, it almost seems like what I'm hearing from you is you see opportunity. Well, one, you're leveraging your network. You have this friend of a friend of the godmother, this and that, right? And you're kind of like, you're leveraging that and you're turning it into something. And then two, seeing the opportunity that's in front of you. Because I feel like a lot of people in the moment, they could be getting slapped in the face with opportunity, but for whatever reason, they're not seeing it or they're not ready to respond to it or whatever the case may be. So far, what I'm hearing in your story is you are the person that sees the opportunity, that seeks the opportunity, that takes advantage of the opportunity.
You know what, Paul? I don't necessarily agree with that because I don't feel like I see the opportunity.
Okay.
I feel like the opportunity just kind of like happens or lands in front of me during a conversation. Everybody has an amazing story. You never know what that person is going through or inside or what they do or whom they know. I am leveraging these opportunities. I don't feel like I see them, Paul. I just feel like they land. Like the universe is there, man. And I know I sound fruitcake, but
no, but Sean, let's.
I didn't seek it out.
I rarely disagree with people to this extent, but I'm going to disagree with you, Sean Todd, because you literally just told me that they said, "Hey, we need a speechwriter." You were hesitant, but you were the one that raised your hand, so that is taking advantage of that opportunity. All right, sorry to make you sound like a liar, Sean, but you are, because it's okay.
I raised my hand with a lot of trepidation. not
But you
knowing
did.
where.
But that's the point, is that you did, where I think maybe 95% of people would not. So that's my point. But, okay. So your speech writing, let's go. Let's keep going. No, go ahead.
Well, I do like the way you're pulling these threads, but because I kind of never saw them the way you see them. But, I have been really fortunate, Paul. And, but I do think like you have to take that, what you just observed, take that one step to give it a shot. If you don't give it a shot, I mean, it's the old Wayne Gretzky or Jordan who said it. I missed 100% of the shots I never took.
Right.
But that's why I think if you're an introvert, man, are you disadvantaged unless you're an introvert that's learned to take a little step. I mean, I think 75% of the world is extroverted. And I was actually deeply introverted, but kind of grew and evolved out of that in high school as a military brat. I grew up all over, Paul, and, cut off my arm to ask a girl out or go meet someone new, 0 through 9, 0 through 10, ages 0 through 12, 0 through 14, 16 was tough. But then we moved from South Dakota to West Germany. And every time you move, you have the chance to start over and be a completely new person. So in between my sophomore and junior year in high school, I was, all right, I'm kind of a little bit tired of being the shy guy. I'm going to be a little bit more forward and open. So kind of eventually grew out of my shell. And my dad is super extroverted. My mom's pretty introverted, but I guess evolved more from my mother to my father over time. I mean, most people would call me a big extrovert. I still don't think of myself that way. I mean, if you look at Myers-Briggs, my E was +1. That's pretty in the middle. So taking a chance, though, you gotta take a little bit of a chance, man.
100%. All right. So you are speech writing, and then let's fast forward a little bit more. So I think there was a point at which you were working. Well, there's so much to cover. I want to get all of it. I think you're working for the actual government then, right? At that point.
I was working at the U.S. Department of Energy. Don was assistant secretary. He went to be undersecretary. And at the end of the first Clinton term, a new secretary came on board. Hazel Leary left. Federico Pena came on board. Tom Grumley, thanks to him, all the gratitude, he set me up with the new incoming secretary, Federico Pena from Colorado, who was the secretary of transportation and then went over to DOE in the second term. So I became his speechwriter. Here comes another roadblock. You ready? I was speechwriting for Pena. I wrote his inaugural, his swearing in speech. I wrote the speech that was like the groundbreaking for the National Ignition Facility up in Lawrence Livermore Lab up in the Bay Area. It's the world's largest laser. It's created fusion, actually, 20 years later. So I'm writing speeches, but then a new communications director comes in, and she wanted a different person. So I was like reshuffled out of that job. But I did a different job my last year, and then I transitioned out of Department of Energy. But what I did was, this gets into like some real policy wonk stuff, Paul. Nuclear weapons and nuclear waste storage, which is what I still do. So in 1997-98, we were opening up the world's first geologic repository for nuclear waste. It's called transuranic waste outside of Carlsbad, New Mexico. And as you know, NIMBY is not in my backyard. Nobody wants nuclear waste in their backyard. But this facility was actually technically good enough, an order of magnitude better than what it needed to be. So there's still a lot of opposition. I mean, this is a geologic repository. It's super deep in these salt caverns. And so it encapsulates by salt over time. It's not high level waste. It's intermediate waste, transuranic waste. So what we did for a year, we did the National Dialogue on Nuclear Waste, and we did this outreach to students and stakeholders and locally elected officials and state government in New Mexico. And we had a dialogue about what this facility means. And ended up through that dialogue, you establish trust and credibility, and you get to know the facility. It opened up in 1997. World's first nuclear geologic repository, the waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico. So I did that my last year there since I was fired as a speechwriter. And then I got a job, again, follow up. Some buddy of mine, Mark Fallon, said, "Hey, Sean, this company's looking for a lobbyist. You could do it. You want to apply?" I said, "I'd love to, Mark." So it was called International Technology Corporation. And they're looking for a Department of Energy guy. I stuck my hand up, interviewed, and got the job. And so there's three kinds of lobbyists. There's in-house lobbyists, which means you work for Coca-Cola or Ford or Walmart. You work for that company or the government affairs lobbyists inside the company. There's trade association lobbyists. The trade association represents the entire industry, like American Petroleum Institute, that represents oil and gas.
Right.
The Car Dealership Association, the Nuclear Energy Institute represents the nuclear industry. So that's trade association lobbyists. And then you have independent for-hire, mercenary, hired gun lobbyists, independent lobbyists. And they get hired by companies and trade associations to work on projects. And so I was an in-house lobbyist for international technology. I was the deputy. There's two of us, the senior, my boss, Craig Crotto, and me. And then we had hired guns too. And we also belonged to trade associations. So I did that for 3 years, got another great education, and then got the bug to start my own firm. So at this point we had 3 kids, but I got the bug to start hang out my own shingle. 2001.
Right.
I'll tell you 2 quick stories, Paul. In fact, can I go off a tangent again?
Sure.
You see that scar right there?
So we're looking at something on his upper chest that's probably
Yeah.
5 or 6 inches long, maybe.
Yeah, I had a blood clot in my chest. So they took out my top rib. That's where your top rib is. My top rib was cutting off my subclavian vein. So they had to go take it out. So I was in the hospital for a couple weeks, and priest came in, and, you know, it was a little hairy. And my lung cavities filled up with blood because there was a suture and it was not. It's a long story. But at one point they had to do emergency surgery. They stick a chest tube in me and 2 liters of blood flies out. But I got out of it. I got out on Easter Sunday. I was 33. On Easter Sunday, I came out of the hospital. And that year I was telling my wife I wanted to start my own firm. And she was so busy with 3 little kids. 3 kids under the age of 5. She had no idea what I was proposing. She just said, fine, Sean, whatever you want. I'm not.
Yeah.
I can't deal with anything. So I got to give her credit. She gave me a lot of, it was a statement of confidence that I could go do this.
Right.
And so I had this guy, Dr. Dev Shukla. He was the first guy in the world to license a nuclear power plant using probabilistic risk assessment techniques. So he's this big brain from India, American citizen. He was naturalized, but Indian American from Walnut Creek, California. And Dev said, Sean, I need a Navy lobbyist. Give me a Navy lobbyist. So I gave the name of my buddy, who has one of the biggest firms here in town now. But here's the little quirk, Paul. My buddy never called him. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, Dev, I could do this for you.
Yeah.
And thank God Dan never called him, because I said, so we dialogued over a course, a couple months, Dr. Shukla and I. He said, come on out. So I called in sick on a Friday. I flew out to Walnut Creek. He said, okay, I like entrepreneurs. Come back tomorrow morning. So Friday, I'm in the Holiday Inn. I don't sleep all night. I show up tomorrow at Dev's office at 8 a.m. with 2 cups of coffee. He pulls up in his Audi and he says, I propose him. Here's what I want to do. I'd be happy to help you, lobby for you, and do some marketing for you in DC. Because the federal government's the largest consumer on the planet. Buys more products and services than anybody else. So Dev looks at me across the table and he says, okay, I'll fund you 2 months, but I can't sign anything because International Technology is my biggest client. That's who I work for. He was the big subcontractor. So I said, okay, I shook his hand and walked out to the parking lot. I called my wife and I said, well, honey, I think we got a deal. I shook his hand. I looked him in the eye and he said, great. So no contract, nothing. Quit my job. And here's the biggest irony, Paul. 2 weeks later, my old company, International Technology, goes Chapter 11.
Jesus. Yeah.
I would have been fired anyway, man.
Okay. Well, there you go. Well, here you go. So there's Sean Todd raising his hand again, right? Because somebody passed on an opportunity, and here comes Sean Todd walking up with his hand up in the air saying, I'll do it. So again, we're seeing the theme here, right? So it doesn't take much. It's when opportunity presents itself, just raising your hand and saying yes, and then just kind of see where that takes you.
Yeah, it's like just a conversation, Paul.
Right.
Here it gets better, though. So I'm working for Dr. Shukla. His name of his company is ITSI, Innovative Technical Solutions Incorporated. IT Group, International Technology, it's owned by the Carlyle Group, one of the largest equity funds in the world. Rarely do they have a company that goes Chapter 11. This other company comes in, Shaw Group, and buys them on December 26th, 2001. I know a guy who works for the Shaw Group, Steve Marlowe. He hires me to help at the transition in 2002, right? January 2002. He becomes my second client, and they've been a client for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but they stuck with me. So I got 2 clients all of a sudden. And then I go back to my grad school, University of Maryland, and I brainwash them into hiring me. So all of a sudden I have 3 clients and this is like, whoa, hair's on fire. What's going on here?
Right. So I think, to be an entrepreneur is a whole nother level, right? But from what I'm hearing from your story is, one, your ability to network, especially in the consulting and the type of work that you're doing, is paramount. And I think you've already demonstrated throughout your career history that you're able to do that. And then the second thing was identifying opportunity. And then the third thing is follow through. So if you basically have those 3 things, there's probably a good likelihood that you can succeed as an entrepreneur. That's what I'm hearing. If you don't, then you might want to just consider working for somebody. Does that sound about right?
You've captured it, Paul.
Okay.
I think you really captured that really well. The concision, you just captured everything right there, man.
I'm doing my best. So I do want to talk, I think what you do, what you've been doing the last 25 years is fascinating. We don't really talk politics on here, but I do think it's fascinating with what's happening in Iran and the whole thing around, nuclear weapons. And you mentioned that's basically what you do, but maybe at the end of the life cycle, right after it's maybe been a weapon or its life cycle, now it needs to be stored somewhere at waste. And so I don't think anyone talks about, we talk about it, a nuclear being, I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but basically enriched uranium, and then that turns into nuclear weapons. And no one talks about after that, right? Like, hey, this actually didn't get used because people talked each other off the ledge, thankfully, in the world, and we didn't destroy ourselves. But now that, or whether it's coming from a power plant or however nuclear, substances are being used, it then has to go somewhere. And that's what you've been doing the last 25 years, right? It's like, what do we do with that stuff after its life cycle? Is that right?
That's accurate, Paul. You really can distill things down really well. A radionuclide is a particle of radioactivity. It's not a particle, it's a wave. And that's what measures radioactivity. So the thing is about a radionuclide is that you cannot clean one up. It doesn't go away. What you can do is, if there's a radionuclide in soil or water or debris, you can mechanically cleanse it and consolidate it such that you can move it and transport it into a safe disposition. But probably the best success story is Rocky Flats, Colorado, where we made plutonium. It was one of the most polluted sites in America. And that's a great success story. We cleaned that site up and took down all those buildings and gathered all that plutonium and all these glove boxes that was plutonium contaminated and cleaned it up and disposed of it at certain other sites, such that Rocky Flats is now this, natural park. It's really cool. It's a great story. And so, but all that radioactivity in its different media form is somewhere else. I think it's being stored safely, in my opinion. But there's 2 different types of nuclear waste, Paul. There's commercial nuclear waste, which is what gets burned in commercial nuclear reactors to make electricity. And there's defense nuclear waste, which is used to make weapons from the Manhattan Project. So that's kind of a basic division of the 2 different types of nuclear.
So without getting into too much of the technical components, especially for someone like me that probably can't keep up with that, but just at a very high level, how does it work? I mean, you had mentioned something about salt mines, and are they just digging really deep holes and burying this stuff there? Like, I'm just curious how that stuff works.
Well, it's a great question. And our nation hasn't come to grips about what our final solution is, our final repository. For many years, it's funny how public policy gets made, but you may have heard of Yucca Mountain in Nevada. That was the designated site for all the spent nuclear fuel from the commercial and from both sources to be stored there for final disposition in Yucca Mountain, Nevada. It's about just north of Las Vegas, about 90 miles. But the way that decision was made, this is where, in writing legislation, they say it's like watching sausage get made. So the Nuclear Waste Disposal Act of 82, there were different sites about where to put this repository. And there's staffers from the House and Senate, during conference, you had 2 different bills from the House and Senate. They had a conference to work out the differences. There was nobody in the room from Nevada. And they said, well, let's put it at Yucca Mountain. And that's how Yucca Mountain got designated, because nobody was in the room from Nevada. And, you could find that in different case studies and different anecdotes, and different staffers will tell you that story. I don't know how widely known that is, but so for years we did this technical evaluation. Is Yucca Mountain good enough? I happen to think it's good enough. I think it's technically good enough to store waste there, but there's a lot of, you get a lot of people, and there's a lot of people in Nevada who feel the same way. You always see there's 2 sides to every story, Paul. A lot of people think it's not safe because of geologic movements, et cetera, et cetera. But that was effectively, Yucca Mountain was effectively severed as an option about 15 years ago. So for commercial spent nuclear fuel, it's sitting in these commercial reactors in pools of water, and it's safe there for about another, I would say it's relatively safe there for another 30 to 60 years, but eventually it's going to be needed to be stored somewhere. And Finland's on top of this. You can reprocess that waste. That's a whole other story about reprocessing spent fuel. That's a long story. Finland is on top of a new repository for geologic disposal. There's an Indian tribe, Native American tribe in Utah called the Goshutes who wanted to take it over, and the state government effectively squashed that idea. So, but you are right, like deep borehole disposal is sort of the flavor of the month right now. So this administration is doing some feasibility studies on deep borehole disposal for different forms of nuclear waste.
All right. And then I think the last thing I want to talk about is just the industry as a whole. So you're kind of a, lobbyist, or you call yourself a mercenary or hired gun. And, again, as an outsider looking in, you just hear a lot about, this lobby and that lobby and whatever, right? And just backroom deals and things like that. And so do you think that lobbies are misunderstood? Are they properly understood? And what is just evident? This is a very big question. I know I'm asking, but just how do they fit in the overall ecosystem of just how governments are making decisions?
Yeah, well, that's another really great question, Paul. So yeah, I've been a registered lobbyist for 30 years. And how does it fit in? Well, it goes back to the First Amendment Constitution, the right for citizens to petition their government. That's where lobbyists get their right to do what they do. However, I do feel like we definitely distort the system. More cliches, Paul. Congress is controlled by special interests. Rarely do they do things that are like for the good of the entire country, I think.
Right.
Most of these bills are written with, some lobbyists' hand, maybe even drafting legislation. I mean, I've written a lot of letters and committee report language that just came from my typewriter for my clients. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Now, in my defense, I do think it's the right thing to do. I think my clients have almost always saved government money, doing things cheaper, faster, better. That's how I like to start with the merit of the project, the merit of the program, the merit of what they're trying to do, the aims and intentions. So, that's me being self-righteous. But ask yourselves this question. Who can afford lobbyists? People who have entrenched corporate interests, who have cash to hire. You would say on the other side, unions have a lot of money too, and they can hire people. Also true. Entrenched corporate interests have most of them.
Yeah.
So status quo, Machiavelli said the hardest thing to do is to change something in government. Most people want things to stay the way they are.
Yeah, I think, so you do hear some of these politicians, like Bernie Sanders comes to mind, and maybe some of these that are self-funded, meaning, right, they're getting small donations from lots of people as opposed to from super PACs and things like that. And they're kind of trying to tell this story of like, hey, you don't want us to be bought and sold for? Then, you guys, the citizens, you guys have to give me $5, $10 here. And, then we will really have your interest in mind versus just the normal way of doing things, which is, hey, they're going to get, $500,000, $1 million from these people, and then they're going to be bought and paid for. So do you buy into that? Is there legitimacy to that? Or is that just a wishful thinking kind of scenario?
Well, keep in mind, I'm a small bit player. I'm not a first tier lobbyist. I'm third tier. And so there is, if you're going to follow the money, there are laws passed and Supreme Court decisions that allow dark money to enter the process. There's so much dark money in the system now. Yeah, it's hard to trace it. It's hard to get things done because most people want to block what's happened, block change. I think that to me, the biggest concern is this. The turn of the century, the national debt was under 10 trillion? I think it just crossed over to 37 trillion.
Yeah, right.
This week. That's red ink. That's the enemy, is the red ink. We are way in debt. And Social Security and Medicare are most of the budget. Most of the annual budget are those, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt. Interest on the debt's going to exceed $1 trillion this year, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
It's an enormous suck on our government. So we have to come to terms with this. Nobody talks about it. Last time there was a couple serious efforts. Graham Rudman Hollings in the 90s. That was a deficit reduction. There was a big panel. I'm getting really wonky, Paul, so sorry, but there was a big panel in the Clinton year, Obama years. It was known by two persons. I forget the name of it, but they had a real plan and that got scrapped. So I feel like this country walks right up to the abyss, looks over the edge, and then we finally find somewhere with all to step back and do the right thing. But it's going to take the abyss, I think, for Congress to do it. Because right now, how many people do you talk about the $37 trillion debt we have in this country? No, I don't hear it.
It was a hot topic for a while, but yeah, it seems like it's kind of fallen into the background and we got distracted by all the other major events that have been going on.
I think it's a big deal, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's to me, it would be a top national priority if I were president.
So let's, I want to end on a high note here. We could probably go down that rabbit hole for No. It's probably super depressing. Yeah. No. I think it's really fascinating what you do. Your career journey has really been amazing. I think what I heard and how I would interpret it is where you are today, career-wise, is probably nowhere near where you possibly could have imagined that you were going to end up. First of all, is that correct? And two, what would you say to just people that maybe, if we go all the way back to the beginning of this story, they're just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. I mean, how would you talk to them about that? So this is always your master plan, right? You're going to be a lobbyist.
No.
You're going to be.
I had no plan. Although I was like, just these little tiny nuggets, Paul. When I was in college at Georgetown, one year I was a research assistant in the Smithsonian Castle, that beautiful red brick building on the National Mall. And I was working for Dr. Shaul from Iran. His wife was actually got imprisoned in Iran, but I was summarizing books from him. He was an historian. And so it was called the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Scholars. And I was just a research assistant, but I was having lunch and there were two grad students over there. I overheard them talking on their lunch and the guy said, well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to be the gun behind the door. I want to become a lobbyist. I don't know if that's stuck in the way recesses of my mind or not, but yeah, I was like, okay, what does that exactly mean? I was like 19 years old or something, but no, this is not a master plan. You follow your nose, you follow your instinct, you give life a chance. I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I think it's rare. I have 4 kids, Paul. One is STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. He's an engineer. And my wife and I saw him from the time he could crawl and walk. He was interested in mechanical things. He was looking at escalators and elevators and trucks and cars and planes and trains and automobiles. And we knew he was going to. We knew he was going to be an engineer. Right. I mean, I would have bet a lot of money he would turn out to be a mechanical engineer. So he goes to college, mechanical engineering. He says, "Well, Dad, I'm changing to systems engineering." I said, "Oh, that's cool. Why are you going to change to systems or it's going to be aerospace or mechanical?" He's like, "Well, it just makes more sense to me." That's a great reason. Go for it. So he's a systems engineer. He works for the National Geospatial. So engineers, I think, are lucky. They know from the beginning, Paul. Most of us don't. Liberal arts type. Yeah. I think you just got to keep searching, man. Keep the search going. That's all you got. That just sparked a memory for me. And that was, my best friend growing up, his dad was an architect. And he knew at an early age, he's like, I'm going to be an architect, right? And so I remember thinking to myself, well, wait, and this is me. I like 12, 13 years old. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Is something wrong with me? What's going on? Right? Because I had this friend that seemed to have it all kind of figured out. And so I connect with you a lot in that way because I feel like we kind of both took very similar paths. We ended up in a really great place. I would advise against taking our approach though, unless you're the type of person that can identify opportunity, that can build a network, that can follow through. If you can do those things, then go with the win and see where it takes you. If you cannot, then you better have a plan. That's my 2 cents. Do you agree or disagree with that? That's a great plan. I wish I had thought of that years ago. But I will say this too, man. I think all 4 of my kids are in their 20s, Paul. Look at your 20s as like a project workshop. You have plenty of time. I mean, you could do at least 3 jobs in your 20s and get a taste, explore, sample. Yeah. And then, get serious around 30, I think. Might be one line of thinking. I like your encapsulation better though. All right. Well, hey, we really appreciate having you on. All this business about 2 first names. I mean, after spending an hour with you, I'm throwing it out the window. I think you're a legit person. So I don't know where that came from, man. Appreciate the time. You never know where some stuff comes from. Paul, my pleasure. It's been great. Okay. Thanks for having me, man. Really enjoyed it. All right. Thanks. The Rockies ain't too far from here if we drive all night. The cold air will do you well in the mountain morning light. So let's ride on through the rain. Come on and take me anywhere that you wanna be. Let's ride and let's ride. Let's follow the skyline.
inside.